What is going on, Crisis Actors? It is episode 996 of Pop Culture Crisis. My name is Brett, and I am here once again with my co-host. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Crisis Actors. It's Mary. We already have a $20 super chat that I need to read from Shane H. Wilder. Happy Wednesday, Brett and Mary. I just dropped a video fixing the halftime show by making it the PCC halftime show with musical guest Mary Morgan. Not as entertaining as a internet show, but you shouldn't be there anyway. Thank you for that little PSA about the show that doesn't exist. I want to see the halftime show, though. Yeah. Do I do the Cher impression? It would have been way better.
Different strokes for different folks.
Look, I think I've seen like more takes from conservatives claiming that other conservatives are overreacting than conservatives that are overreacting at this point.
This is what I was telling you the other day. I said, you know what they love to do is they love to appear not, unbiased. So it's like, I fall into that category where it's like, you know what? It's like oppositional defiant disorder. Just because everybody else hates it, you know what? Fuck it. I think it's pretty good. I didn't think that about the halftime show, but I'm saying, that happens.
I think I was the one who unofficially diagnosed you with that. Or it was a different one. It was like pathological demand avoidance. But what was the one that you just
oppositional defiance disorder is like psychopaths have that. So
right, no, you're not a sociopath or a psychopath or anything like that. But
I care too.
Yeah, I kind of had to be the milquetoast fence sitter in that I hated both the Turning Point show and the Bad Bunny show.
Well, yeah, I posted the tweet. I said, look, I won't pretend to like Kid Rock, and you don't pretend to like Jimmy Kimmel, and we'll all be fine. Like just because it's a culture war doesn't mean we have to pretend to like things.
We can all dislike things in harmony.
Yes, we can. We can absolutely do that. Guys, hit the like button on this video, please, and subscribe to the channel if you are new here and you have not subscribed here yet already. Please and thank you. Remember to share the video, the segments, the episodes out with everybody in your life that you know. The more people that you share our content with, the faster this channel can grow, it's growing at a pretty good rate right now. So thank you guys so much. Remember, we would not be here if you guys weren't here supporting the show, engaging with the content in the live chat, whatever it is that you do to support the show. We appreciate it. So thank you guys. What are we getting into today? Well, there was an Olympic level cheating scandal. And they didn't even have to use drugs to do it, apparently. No, it's not cheating in the sport. Some dude from Norway just decided that right after winning his Olympic medal, he thought that would be a good time to unburden himself of the fact that he had cheated on an ex. I don't know why you would announce that to the entire world, but people are dragging this dude on the internets. So we're going to talk about it. We are also
cheating in the game of love,
exactly.
If you will.
It's nobody wants to be cheated there. That's bad. We're also going to talk about Kurt Cobain. An independent investigator has concurred that it looks like they believe that Kurt Cobain's death was not, in fact, a suicide, but was a homicide. So we will get into it. That was big news yesterday. And then, of course, Tobey Maguire is back in the discussion, and it has nothing to do with Spider-Man anymore. It's always about age gap relationships. And then, wasn't he dating a witch at one point? I feel like he was dating a witch at one point.
Oh, wait, no, that was Andrew Garfield,
same
right?
Thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah, we did like a whole segment doing a deep dive on this crazy astrologer that he was dating. It just came up because, Spider-Man. But yeah, he has even weirder taste in women than Tobey Maguire does. Tobey Maguire's just like DMing, like he's just sliding into the DMs of Instagram models. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, Andrew Garfield is like dating a witch who casts spells on people.
They broke up.
Yeah, they did.
So.
Surprise there.
So we've got that. We've got a bunch of other stuff. If you're ready to go, we can go. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, look, this just dropped right before we went live, and unfortunately, we do have to start the show off with some horrible news. Rest in peace to actor James Van Der Beek. He was just 48 years old. You may know him from Dawson's Creek. He's been in all sorts of things. He's been an actor for a very, very long time. Despite just being 48, Dawson's Creek was a huge part of, it wasn't a huge part of my childhood, but it was a very huge part of people my age's childhood. So he had colorectal cancer, and the big thing, I think more than anything, is he was one of those rare people in Hollywood that had a strong family life. He had 6 children.
Yeah, and they're all quite young, which makes this story much sadder. I believe the oldest is a teenager, and the youngest was born in 2021.
Yeah.
And that's a huge family in general, but especially for people in Hollywood. The last time that we talked about James Van Der Beek was because of this controversy over him selling Dawson's Creek memorabilia in order to cover the outrageous medical costs that he's undertaken in the last few years, because he was diagnosed with stage 3 in 2023, and he's been fighting for a few years until today. And people were just aghast that he would have to, or rather now his family would have to incur the costs of his treatment, instead of, I believe the studio was Sony, reaching out to cover it. And we were kind of going over the ethical debate of whether they're obligated to do so. I mean, it's not that they're obligated to, but like, it certainly would be nice. It would be mutually beneficial for both parties if they, had some good PR, and then also his family doesn't have to be weighed down with these medical costs even after dealing with his loss.
We have a 20 from Pop Culture Junkie. Says, great Hollywood Reporter article today on the use of smear websites and dark PR consultants in cases like the Lively and Baldoni mess. I actually sent you that article right before we went live saying we should talk about it on Friday.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. I didn't get a chance to read it yet.
So his James Van Der Beek's death was announced on the actor's official Instagram page. It says, quote, our beloved James David Van Der Beek passed peacefully this morning. A caption of a photo of the actor read, he met his final days with courage, faith, and grace. There is much to share regarding his wishes, love for humanity, and the sacredness of time. Those days will come. For now, we ask for peaceful privacy as we grieve our loving husband, father, son, brother, and friend. The actor was diagnosed with, again, stage 3 colorectal cancer in August of 2023. He shared his illness with the public in November of 2024. He continued working in spite of his health. I just looked up his IMDb. He has credits going all the way up to this past year. So it's theoretically possible that he completed things that will come out in 2026 because they would have gone into post-production late in 2025. It says he was appearing on shows like the CW's Walker and Amazon Prime's Overcompensating. Van Der Beek also competed against fellow disguised celebrities on The Masked Singer. I remember when Rudy Giuliani ended up on The Masked Singer and everybody got really mad. And he was signed on to Amazon Prime's Legally Blonde prequel as Dean Wilson, a school district superintendent and mayoral candidate. He previously shared...
that does have yet to come out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it necessarily says that he finished filming, but, you would hope. They also said he shared with USA Today that his diagnosis reinvigorated his love for his chosen profession. He says, for a minute, I thought, you know what? I don't need acting. I don't need it in the way that I did before, he said during an interview with the summer of 2025. I'm very, very happy with just doing this here with my family. And then when I got cancer, I realized I love to tell stories. Acting is actually a real passion. Writing is a real passion, and I need to feed that. So I joke that I'm the only guy I know who got cancer and realized I need to work more. Well, I'm actually sure that that's true of a lot of people in Hollywood who do live their craft and love what they do and don't, I don't know if I would put like Millie Bobby Brown into that category, who seems like she just shows up because, it's a job, and that's okay too. Like that's not a problem. But for a lot of people, when you struggle with life-altering circumstances, when something bad happens in your life, family is one thing that tethers you to the world, but for a lot of people, work is that other thing. You could almost make the argument that that's more common these days as families become less common, is that people they reinvest themselves in their work and the things that have brought them some sense of completion over the last several years. Now, that's not to say that's necessarily the smartest or healthiest idea if it's to excess, because obviously too much work and not engaging in the rest of your life is bad. But for actors, a lot of them do live in that world where they're emotional beings, and it's a release for them to perform.
Yeah, and death is a mysterious thing, and the timing of it is always going to be a mysterious thing. But there's not a doubt in my mind that his rededication to both his family and his career probably lengthened his life. I think having a purpose, having a will to live is in some sense more salient than, the technology in modern medicine that we use to keep people alive. Like, if someone doesn't have a will to live, it is actually going to shorten their life.
It's like you hear the stories of two like elderly, like an elderly husband and wife, and one passes and then the other one passes right after, even though they were still in good health at that time. Like maybe their health wasn't necessarily the greatest. It wasn't failing, but you know, their love for that other person kept them tethered to the world. And when that person is gone, suddenly you don't have that, you know, to hold you over anymore. It's sad. And for him, I remember him, like I did watch Dawson. I tried to watch Dawson's Creek this past couple of years. I gave it a couple of watches because I tried to watch a lot of those shows that I missed when I was growing up because they just didn't interest me. I could not believe how much of it was about sex. It was shocking to me. Like, I was like, man, the 90s really were different. Like, within 5 episodes, Joshua Jackson's character is having an affair with his teacher, and he's like 15 and stuff like that. But if you want to think about the reach of shows like that, Kevin Williamson, who is the creator of that show, is about to put out Scream 7, which debuted, like, around that same time. Like, I don't know what year Dawson's Creek debuted at, if it was, like, 1997 or what year it was, but Scream debuted in 1995, and all of those, a lot of those actors, like, they're still working today, and you could tell by the reach of they did a Dawson's Creek reunion this past year that he wasn't able to attend. They actually said later that it wasn't for health reasons. I think they said it was for some other reason. I'm wondering if that was just cover.
I don't know.
In the end, but the amount of people who spoke up during that time period, like you said, to ask Sony to maybe if they want to contribute to his, it wasn't a GoFundMe, but to his health care expenses would have been great PR for them.
It's not too late if they wanted to help out the family, you know.
It does go to show we take oftentimes a more pragmatic or negative approach to Hollywood because we're being hypercritical of things that are going on in the industry now. But one thing that I've always tried to balance that perspective with is it is very clear to me that despite the fact that there are plenty of things wrong within the industry, much of what has been, okay, let me rephrase that, not much. There's a good amount of things that have been created that end up meaning a lot of things to a lot of people.
You could say millennials needed this.
See, we joke about that, and that is the hyperbolic, over-the-top nature of which millennials speak. But it doesn't mean that it's not true that these things didn't, strike a chord with a generation of people. Many people kind of define their childhood by whatever TV shows, movies, or popular culture were in at that time. I've been watching these old videos of I watched this video about the death of the 2000s aesthetic and where the 2000s aesthetic came from. Basically, it kind of all wraps around Apple and sleek tones and futurism. But
there were many different throughout the aughts. There were many different iterations of that. But in the early aughts, it was definitely like.
Their idea was that Apple, it stopped because Apple found the way to simplify and basically simplify and perfect that aesthetic in a way that was both functional for professionals, but also spoke to people who liked that look. But you look back at the silver tone of everything. Everything was glossy. Everything was metallic. And they were talking about it was indicative of a time where society had hope for the future. Where futurism didn't have a dark, dour tone to it. The idea was that you had a futuristic idea of where we were going to end up, and that someplace was someplace better. Now, Dawson's Creek in these shows, oftentimes, they didn't take an approach like that. In fact, I think about when Scream came out, and I'm bringing this back to Kevin Williamson. There's a song on the soundtrack called Youth of America that's literally in 1995 about how the kids are screwed up. And you think about what happened a couple years later with Columbine and all of that stuff, and all of it kind of pushes together. And it's just he's a part of that now. The TV shows, the movies that he was involved in, he is a part of what shaped American culture for the last 30 years.
Yeah, I wonder if there are stars in the next generation that have that level of impact. Because after the OG Disney era, I think that definitively ended. Well, no,
because again, it's kind of what we've been talking about the last week. He was a part of monoculture. He was a part of the television shows and movies that had to be seen because there was only so many options. I also watched this thing about the death of must-see TV and the amount of data analytics that went into where they put their television programming at specific times is absolutely insane. It was always corporate, you know, it was always designed by corporations. So he is part of this great part of American culture, you know, arguably the one that conservatives talk about wanting to go back to. Even though I think if they watched Dawson's Creek, they would be horrified by what they saw. But that's kind of the dichotomy there, right? Like they kind of long to go back to that period, but forget some of the stuff that was very popular because the left was the counterculture of the time.
Well, Dawson's Creek is definitely before my time, but maybe I'll give it a try and see if I'm horrified by what I see. It might be up my alley.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I still think Pretty Little Liars would be more up your alley than Dawson's Creek somehow. I'm
not sure, because I've heard that Pretty Little Liars, it doesn't exactly go in a soap opera direction. It goes in like turns into like the Riddler.
Yeah,
like
basically.
I'm not really into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to be at least a little bit more grounded in realism.
There is no realism there.
That's not really. Yeah, I might be disappointed by it.
All right, let's move on. We've got a lot of stuff to get into today. Let's talk about Snow White.
We are almost a year on from the theatrical release of Disney's live-action Snow White movie starring Rachel Zegler. And now, after all this time, the media is finally willing to address the huge financial hit that Disney took with this failing movie. They lost $170 million, according to this new report in Forbes. I know it probably pained them to publish this, but it was written by Caroline Reed. And I want to mention a friend of the show, Valiant Renegade, was given a huge shout out in this article for his research that predicted 2 years earlier, before the movie came out, exactly how much money they were going to lose on it.
Oh yeah, he's looking into like
were confirmed.
He's looking into like tax filings in foreign countries. Like,
yeah,
he's the person where I'm just like, I wish I had his attention span.
And the math skills are totally beyond me as well. But he was fully vindicated by this report, and they rightfully gave him the credit he deserved. But here was what was interesting about it. I didn't even know this detail, but part of the reason why studios are turning to filming in the UK is because the UK government incentivizes them to do so. They offer a reimbursement of a certain percentage of production costs as long as it's contributing to their economy. And even that failed to offset the massive loss that Disney took with this film. So I'll just go into more of the detail here. The dark spell cast on Disney's bottom line by last year's live-action Snow White has been revealed in filings which show that the movie was forecasted to be over the production budget, with costs of $336.5 million. And it also noted that people interchangeably refer to a movie's budget and its costs, but the budget only refers to what Disney basically allocated to it at the beginning. That doesn't mean that that's necessarily what they spent. They actually spent more than they allocated for it at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that has to do with production delays, and that's related to
and we're going to do the dwarves. No, we're not going to do the dwarves. Yes, we are going to do the dwarves.
Yeah. And the marketing cost, of course, that also should be tacked on. One of the most
I just leave marketing costs off now, because it's one of those ones where, like, most of the time these failures are so bad on their own, they don't even need the additional, because they come from separate departments anyways.
Yes.
So
and then there's also the cope that, like, well, you never know how much money it really made for Disney because of the merchandising and DVD sales and Disney Plus subscriptions.
Well, that's what they did with Superman.
Divorced from the box office.
That's how they justified Superman, by saying it made $100 million in profit. I do think it's fair to point out that most of the time when we have the discussions about this stuff, you talk about the box office because it's a sign of cultural relevance. Yeah. Whereas it isn't wrong to also want to wait and talk about the DVD sales, the merchandise, but there's so much less clear cut with the numbers for that stuff. It's harder to get that information, whereas the box office stuff is reported weekly.
Another thing that surprised me about this article is how honestly it reported on the controversies surrounding the movie, because not once was there a mention of anyone boycotting the movie over Rachel Zegler's ethnicity. Thank goodness, because usually these articles rehash that fake controversy instead of being honest about the comments that she made in regard to the 1937 classic film,
Yep.
where she was referring to it being like dated and calling the prince a stalker, etc. They always scapegoat the race issue and never address the full scope of the controversies, which involve her comments, her feminist comments, also her comments about Palestine, which are also overblown, her comments about MAGA and Trump supporters. All of that stuff was listed here. So I was surprised to see that so honestly reported on. But the film failed to cast a spell on audiences with worldwide takings of just 87.3 million in its opening weekend, 13% less than the forecast. It went on to earn a total of just $205.7 million, making it the fifth lowest grossing of the 21 live-action theatrical adaptations of Disney cartoons. However, they mention if you adjust for inflation, it's actually it ranks number 2 in the lowest grossing live action adaptation, second only to the 1994 Jungle Book live action remake.
And Mulan is even a hard one to mention too, because it came out during COVID, if I remember. It was 2021.
Right. That's an exception to the rule. Of course, it would have done better if it weren't in the middle of the pandemic. But there's Mulan, Christopher Robin, which came out in 2018.
I don't even remember.
Jungle Book, and 102 Dalmatians, which I totally forgot existed. But again, even if you don't adjust for inflation, it makes it into the top 5. But all of these movies, if you adjust for inflation, except for The Jungle Book, performed better in the box office than Snow White. The low takings alone aren't what made Snow White's performance so disenchanting. Despite being a bust at the box office, it had a blockbuster cost, and there's no doubt about that. The cost of movies made in the US is usually a closely guarded secret, as studios combine their spending on all of them in their filings and don't break them out individually. In contrast, movies made in the UK are an exception, and Snow White was one of them. A lucrative fiscal incentive has made the UK a hub for Hollywood filmmakers and shines a spotlight on the cost of the movies shot there, because studios filming in the UK benefit from the government's audiovisual expenditure credit, which gives them a cash reimbursement of up to 25.5% of the money they spend in the country. It comes with a catch that to qualify for the reimbursement, at least 10% of core costs of production need to relate to activities in the UK. And in order to demonstrate this to the government, studios set up a separate film production company for each picture.
Their union,
and that was
their
Hidden
union,
Heart Productions in Snow White's case.
Their union rules are also less restrictive out there than they are in the US, which makes it a hub for wanting to do movies out there. It's really funny. I saw a post the other day that said, I think The Dark Knight was actually a secret British movie, because like literally every actor was British. Except for like one, it was like Maggie Gyllenhaal Batman Begins. Like only Katie Holmes was like the only American in that movie. Everybody else was from like the UK or Ireland or somewhere in the EU.
The film production companies have to file legally binding financial statements, which reveal everything from the headcount and Social Security payments for staff to the amount of reimbursement banked by the studio and the total cost of production. It takes detective work to get to the bottom of it. The FPCs usually have code names so they don't raise attention with fans when filing permits to film on location. As I said, it was Hidden Heart Productions that they created just for Snow White in the UK. And they say once the code name has been correctly tallied with the film, the financial statements of the relevant FPC can be consulted to reveal how much the movie costs to make. That's because the terms of the reimbursement state that each FPC must be responsible for pre-production, principal photography, shooting, and post-production of the film, and delivery of the completed film. And the FPC's financial statements have to show the production's entire costs, not just those incurred in the UK. Studios are not allowed to hide costs in other companies, as the terms also state. There can only be one FPC in relation to a film. So with Hidden Heart Productions, that was a nod to the Evil Queen's jewelry box. Mm-hmm. The financial statements are filed in stages, which starts during pre-production and goes on long after the premiere to give the company time to ensure it's collected all of its bills and received the money for them. So in 2023, 2 years prior to the film's release, it was reported in the Daily Mail that Disney had already spent $183.3 million on Snow White, even though principal photography had only just wrapped. And the latest set of filings are for the year to the end of 2024, which was less than 3 months before the movie debuted. And at that point, the costs were at $336.5 million.
Yeah.
And this was more than they spent on Rogue One, more than they spent on Guardians of the Galaxy, more than they spent on Emma Watson's Beauty and the Beast, which then went on to make $1.3 billion in 2017. The cost of Snow White is right in line with the 2023 estimate from expert film industry pundit Valiant Renegade, who forecasts that Disney's Snow White remake costed $300 million. Unlike some observers, his estimate wasn't wildly high or low. It was conservative, which served him well, as the costs shown in the filings round down to the precise prediction he made 2 years before the movie was released. W for Valiant Renegade there. It's also crucial that he refers to the film's cost rather than its budget or net expenses, which other observers often use interchangeably. The budget is the amount that Disney initially allocated to spend internally. Early into production, a fire ravaged the Snow White set at Pinewood Studios, and it later underwent extensive reshoots, so it's no surprise that the film blew its budget. However, it doesn't stop there. So the UK government went on to reimburse $64.9 million of the movie's costs, which brought net expenses down to $271.6 million. But even that wasn't enough to give it a happy ending in theaters. And another person in the quote tweets did point out that they probably would have saved tens of millions of dollars had they not used CGI dwarves. They could have just hired real dwarves, and there would have been more goodwill and drawing a larger audience. And they also wouldn't have to spend an insane amount on CGIing. What was it like? That basically they did that at the last minute because they were caving to all of this backlash from Peter Dinklage.
It was literally even the last minute.
Like everybody else, everyone else was fine with it. It was only him who was complaining.
Yeah, and that wasn't even at the last minute. Like that was pretty early on that he did that, and then they canceled, then they brought him back, and the movies felt like they were from two separate things altogether. But the movie still suffers from the same thing that most of those movies do, which is like you looked at the scenes of them in the woods, and it's just CGI woods. They wouldn't even go to an actual wooded area. They just shot it on a sound stage with green screen rather than going and doing anything on location, which might actually help you buy into what you're watching. And on top of that, it looked like ass. Like it was brown and yellow, like a fucking toilet, and it was gross. And you could have saved money by finding a locations manager who could go get you an actual wooded area and some prop designers and some builders to build some cabins out there.
And of course, they had to mention that the theaters are going to take 49% on average of the box office return. So they say this research lends weight to the widely established 50-50 split, which would give Disney just $102.9 million from Snow White, yielding a $168.7 million loss at the box office after deducting the $271.6 million net spending on the movie. And they do kind of issue a little bit of a cope here at the end about, from a Disney spokesperson saying, well, we make a lot of money after the box office too, so it's not reflecting like the true level of like whether it's profitable or not. I don't believe that you can get enough Disney Plus subscriptions to offset $170 million that you lost, but whatever. And on top of that, then Rachel Zegler feels that she can defend the failure of the movie by saying it was the #1 movie on Disney Plus for the first week that it was on there.
And it was doomed from the beginning. If they were literally handicapped from the start because of her comments. Like if that hadn't happened when the promo tour was underway, she did have the one hiccup where she said something about Trump supporters. And at that point, it didn't matter anyways, because everybody had already checked out of that film. But when she was going to random European castles and singing, that would have worked great if people didn't already hate her and not want it to come out.
Yeah, she just went scorched earth at a certain point. And of course, they end up issuing a second Cope response to this failure by mentioning the huge success of Lilo and Stitch, which was the very next live action adaptation that Disney released after Snow White. It brought in $1.1 billion. They're saying, oh, well, that could offset the losses of Snow White. Well, that's not really like how you do business. You don't do business by baking in failures to your plan. You don't financially model failures into your company. Like the point of Snow White is that it was supposed to make money. The point of Lilo and Stitch is that it was supposed to make money. Lilo and Stitch is not going to be planned out as the sugar daddy, essentially, to Snow White. That's not the point of putting out two movies. One of them is planned to fail,
not planned
as a doomed project, and the other one is planned out to offset the failure.
Not planned, but look, they cut whole departments because they're not making enough money. But movie making is essentially high volume betting every single time. Like, if people who make movies have to ostensibly be like gambling addicts, because it's always like, well, it cost $100 million to make and it made $10 million in profit. Nobody spends $100 million to make a couple of $1 million in profit. It's too risky. There's too much at stake to do that. The other thing that this shines a light on, which I would love to know more about, is that's not even the big lie anymore. To me, the big lie was the Marvel movies that suddenly all had budgets of $185 million without any explanation whatsoever. And if you want me to believe that Captain America, whatever the last one was with Anthony Mackie, I already forgot what it was called. If you want me to believe that one, despite having like 4 rounds of reshoots and taking forever to come out, cost $185 million, that's a bridge I'm not buying from you.
What did the live action Moana bring in for Disney?
A lot.
It was a
Wait,
big
live action
success.
Moana? You mean Moana 2? Live action Moana is this year.
Oh, that has yet to come out. Okay, that's coming out in July. Anyway, they were just trying to basically say at the end of this article that this failure of Snow White is not proof that live action adaptations are the problem. And that's true. I mean, I would prefer for them not to constantly recycle these stories and make them live action when that kind of defeats the purpose of the animated medium in general. But they do make a lot of money. Like Disney slop makes a lot of money. Snow White was an exception to that rule. Lilo and Stitch proved that they can make tons of money with just recycled slop.
Well, and
they're going to continue doing that.
It's going to be nothing but that now. Stuff millennials love that they can show to their kids.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All
right, let's move on.
So it is alleged by many people, both inside and outside the modeling industry, that the entire thing is it's a veiled trafficking hub, basically. And it's hard to know as observers from the outside whether or not that's true, but it is alleged to be an open secret. And there are new reports from the Epstein files that allege the same thing of supermodel sisters Gigi and Bella Hadid. They debuted as models at 19 and 20 years old, and there are these emails in the Epstein document drop that mention their names, and the correspondents have their names blacked out, so we have no idea who these people are. But it shows a conversation between Epstein and at least 2 other correspondents, basically in their conjecture about how these 2 sisters became successful supermodels. The conversation took place in December of 2015 when they were first taking off in fame. And this is something that everyone knows Jeffrey Epstein did. He had many young women in his circles who were interested in becoming models or actresses, and he would leverage his connections in order to gain power over them, and also leverage them as in cases where they were underage, leverage them as blackmail by convincing his powerful associates to hook up with them. But this I should mention, doesn't mean that the Hadid sisters ever personally interacted with Jeffrey Epstein. That is not alleged in the files, and there's no proof that they ever met him or had anything to do with him. But this is Epstein's personal opinion, perhaps an educated guess about how they took off in the modeling industry. So this might be a little unclear because we don't know who these names are that were redacted from the document, but I'll try my best to translate here. So this is allegedly a young woman that emailed Jeffrey Epstein and a couple of different people asking the question, how did the Hadid sisters become models and make so much money? I don't understand. And Epstein says, you know. And a different correspondent says the father paid the agency. They're referring to Mohammed Hadid. He is a luxury real estate developer internationally and is mega wealthy. So it's certainly possible that's the answer. But Epstein disagreed. He said, no, it was not because of their father. And then this other correspondent said, there are too many girls giving blowjobs. To which Epstein said he agreed. And the young woman then says, so what did they do? And Epstein said, in the butt.
It's like,
and
it's like none of these people. So this was in 2015. So he's already been convicted by that point, right? Of his first.
For many years.
He's already been convicted by many point. He has to know that he's, at the very least, the government is monitoring his communication. Like, I don't buy for a second that a dude who attained that level of success wasn't smartened to the fact that there could be people paying attention to his communications. He can't have blackmailed all of them. Theoretically, there had to be one person he wasn't blackmailing.
But he's also, like, conscious of that fact. So everything that he says in writing, he says for a very specific reason with much premeditation.
Did you see the
this young woman then says...
Did you see the Batman stuff? Like his obsession with Batman.
And, and
like he said, like, the mouse found her Batman, and I'm just like, bro, you're ruining everything for, like, you're making life unlivable for everyone, not just the people that you've harmed.
So basically, Epstein says that the Hadid sisters are prostitutes who are engaging in sodomy in order to gain connections and success in the modeling industry. The young woman in the correspondence then says, no, seriously. And then another correspondent says, from who? This is the real question. They're asking, like, who are these clients that are prostituting the Hadid sisters? Epstein then says, it's not relevant to your issue. And then the model in this correspondence allegedly says, if they can, why couldn't I? And Epstein then concludes the interaction saying, because they follow directions, it's that simple. Which is incredibly ominous to just end the conversation there.
Yeah.
He's basically accusing these two of being high-level escorts in order to gain the success that they had at the time and to this day, 10 years later. However, this young woman in the correspondence must have no idea who the Hadid family is, because she's coming at this from the perspective that they're total nobodies who just popped up one day,
but their mom
and had
was a
zero
model.
connections.
But their mom was a model, right?
Yeah. Yolanda Hadid, their mother, is a model. I wouldn't say a supermodel or a top model of her time, but she definitely had connections. She's also a reality star. She was in The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She was originally married to David Foster. And on top of that, their father is a billionaire who definitely had the means to get them connected with the right people and allegedly pay for their entry into the modeling agency. I believe it was IGM.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't just total nobodies who showed up one day inexplicably and became supermodels overnight. And I don't believe, actually, the allegation that Epstein made there, that they had to engage in disgusting sexual exchanges in order to become famous. But I think that he was saying that in the correspondence with this naive young woman in order to convince her that this is normal.
Yeah.
And to convince her that this is what you have to do to become famous and relevant. And it of course, worked in many cases because he was only connected with and exploiting poor women. like the young women who were in his circle around Epstein and around Ghislaine Maxwell, they were poor, they didn't have connections, they were friends with him, quote unquote friends with him, because they were his he was their opening into speaking with powerful and rich people. So they're going to take him at his word, and he's subtly, trying to convince them that this is necessary if you want to be a star, which honestly is kind of reminiscent of the Weinstein story. And I know a lot of people will find this repugnant, but it is a point that bears a mention. A lot of the women who were in Epstein's circle, who were interested in breaking into the modeling industry or into Hollywood, were very much making decisions on their own they shouldn't have made. And it wasn't entirely because they were being exploited or forced or even coerced into these scenarios. They were definitely making self-interested decisions, naively perhaps, but self-interested decisions, what they believed they had to do in order to be successful in modeling or acting.
And one of the core ways that you make that happen is you make it a matter of course to say this is just the way that it is, and that's how you do it, is you share that approach. Even if that's not what happened to the Hadids, he just speaks about it as if it's a matter of fact. And
this is
then
why
then it's easier for them to buy it, because they're not saying it to you in some deep or dark way. They're literally just saying, well, that's how it is.
And we know now that Les Wexner was one of the two people that basically made Jeffrey Epstein into a billionaire. Like, he was Jeffrey Epstein's financier, and he was at the top of L Brands at the time, which was the parent company to Victoria's Secret and Victoria's Secret Pink. And now we also know about the connection that Epstein had to the brand for tween girls called Justice, which now no longer exists. But Les Wexner was then one of his colleagues that he, leveraged with young women to convince them, like, I can help you become a famous model. But it's obviously, this is something that would never happen to Gigi or Bella Hadid
because of their parents.
Because they're Nepo babies, and there's nothing inherently wrong with being a Nepo baby. In fact, it probably saved them a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble. And possibly even their lives. They
say the same thing about Miley Cyrus, right? Because her family was in show business to begin with, that she likely was able to avoid those problems because her dad would have known about the evils of the business.
Right. And this article points out that being Nepo babies possibly saved the Hadid sisters. They say by 2015, the Hadids were not unknown teenagers navigating the industry alone. Gigi, who was then 20, had already signed with IMG Models and was appearing in major campaigns. Bella, who was 19, was beginning her runway career with similar representation. Their family base in LA mattered. Their father, Mohammed Hadid, is a luxury real estate developer with long-standing business ties in California and internationally. Their mother, Yolanda, was a former model and reality television personality who was known publicly for closely managing her daughter's careers. This background provided layers of protection that many aspiring models lack, like established agents, legal counsel, parental oversight, and direct access to top-tier fashion institutions. This level of infrastructure may have made the sisters difficult to isolate or to approach through informal channels, methods that Epstein...
Oh, lost your microphone there. We lost your microphone there. She'll be back in a second here, guys. Don't worry about it. The thing that I find craziest about all of this stuff is it really does feel to me like it's become a matter of course in the industry for so long that a lot of people overlook these things because they don't want to admit that it would take a lifetime worth of work to try and restructure.
Hello?
Hello, you good there?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay.
Sorry, you were saying.
No, I think the point is these things, like, it's not that it's not fixable. It's that you can't change the culture in any meaningful way in a manner quick enough that would ever actually work. Like, people want change, and the release of the files has shown you how many evil people that they were in his circle. But how do you do a top-down overhaul of the U.S. government or a top-down overhaul of the fashion industry? These people have embedded themselves in so deeply that it's part of the culture. It's kind of like when I would talk about how you can't destroy the swamp, because if you arrested every top official at every law enforcement agency, well, guess what? There's 20 people under them that they trained. There's 20 people under them that lived through the same culture that they did and are oftentimes loyal to that person. You're not going to change the way large systems like that have overnight. And I think that's one of the things that's really harming everybody's like morale right now, is there's so much evil being thrown in your face so often now that people are like, we need to see people taken out in handcuffs. We want to see people go to jail. And when it doesn't happen, they get demoralized, and I don't blame them.
Yeah,
Oh, we missed a 20. I'm so sorry. We missed a 20. It's from Pop Culture Junkie. It says it's accepted in Hollywood that there are seven different models to calculate a profit and loss for a movie. Much of this is used to find clever ways to screw talent out of a back-end percentage or residuals for streaming. Yeah, I bet 110%.
Yeah. What I'm about to say is probably going to get misinterpreted, but I really don't mean it to. It's just part of the truth of the Epstein story that isn't really being given enough attention is that he associated with a lot of young women who were 18 to 25, sometimes even like 18 to 30. Mm-hmm. And yes, although many of them were put in compromising and possibly illegal situations, the unavoidable truth of the matter is that a lot of them were making a very conscious exchange of their sexuality in order to attain wealth, even if it didn't, even if that wasn't a gamble that ended up working out for them, which I'm guessing that most of the time, if not all of the time, it didn't, because they were being deceived. It was still a gamble that they were willing to take. And this is part of the revisionist history that's gone on around Harvey Weinstein as well. There were tons of actresses who knew very well the arrangement that they were entering into with him. And to take away entirely from their accountability in that scenario is just, it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help any victims, any actual victims. And if anything, it just muddies the waters.
Well, it goes into what that is the large scale adoption of postmodernism and power structures and how that's looked back upon. They're taking a critical lens to past relationships where one would have looked at it 20 years ago as transactional is now being looked at as coercive, because that's a concept about postmodernism. The idea of power structures being something that you can use to destroy the argument.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's pretty obvious that the Hadid sisters did not prostitute themselves. Epstein probably didn't even believe that when he said it.
Also, you shouldn't for a minute believe that Hollywood actually believes in the idea of the power structure argument, because one thing Hollywood is very good at doing is satirizing itself. It's one of the few things that they tend to get right when they're honest with themselves. And one of those tropes is the actress who will do anything for a role, and she's not portrayed in a helpless fashion. If anything, she's hyper forward and willing to use her physical, she's willing to use her physicality to get what she wants. And that was created at a time when, in a more liberal sense, she was seen as a human being with agency, and you could make your decision for yourself whether you believe that made her a good or a bad person. Was she a bad person because she was willing to, subject herself to something she possibly wouldn't want for the sake of getting a role? Or was she just somebody doing what she had to do? And that was your job to make that decision for yourself. Now they're retroactively going back. And again, this isn't to say that there weren't real victims of these crimes. Underage minors, people who didn't consent to things, people drugged, people put through horrible things. Absolutely happened. Yeah. But the waters have been muddied.
We'll probably get more into that when we get over the age gap discourse later in the show.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's move on. Let's talk cringing cute of the day. What would you like to see first?
Let's see the cringe first.
Okay.
This is a brutal one.
All right. Well, thank you. I always love it when it's so bad you have to preface beforehand. Oh boy, here we go. Yep.
She's at the Starbucks drive-thru.
Yeah, so I'll have a grande lifeccino.
What's a lifeccino? Is that
Oh, you're about to learn.
With equal layers of clarity, focus, and enthusiasm. A layer of whipping cream drizzled with aligned opportunities and a cherry on top. So
Wait, why is whipping cream and cherry allowed on there and the rest of them are just empty platitudes? Is that code for something? Is it like beef jerky in the Epstein files? What the fuck is going on here?
Talk about empty
a grande
calories.
lifeccino. I'll drive ahead.
Why do you do this stuff to me? Is there more or is it over?
I don't even remember. I probably
you.
gave up.
Honestly, that wasn't
Like,
too
what
bad.
do you do? I hate when people involve like a service worker in their social media content.
It would be a wholesome chungus if it didn't involve putting some poor guy through having to listen to you.
Like, what do you do as the Starbucks employee in that scenario? You just tell them to, like, fuck off?
You're like,
I think
so
it would be
by
justified.
so by life, you mean like a cafe mocha or what? Like,
Like, I'm not here for my health, you know? Like, order a drink or GTFO.
yes. Okay, let's do cue to the day. Nepo Kitty here because people asked the other day for photos of Bucket. We do have Bucket
Yay.
here. Bucket is amazing. It says, I hear that people want more Bucket photos. Here are some from the past year since he likes to stay inside during the winter. Yes, he doesn't go out during the winter. His brother, Dusty, will go out in the winter sometimes because he's got a huge mane of fur that seems to probably keep him more warm. But he's gotten pretty bold, whereas before, oh, that's a good one. Before, he would just hang out here because this is the food bowl we put the food in for him in. Now, when we open the door, he just walks right in. He just comes in the
his
house.
property.
Yeah, he just thinks he lives there. We love him.
Is he fixed? Not to be TMI, but
I
I
have
was
no idea.
just wondering.
I have no idea. I have to ask Olivia.
You might have to watch out. in
Well, I
case
mean,
he's-
we keep him far away from our three girl cats because I'll tell you what, Toast and Bucket make eyes from the top and the bottom of the staircase, and I'm like, buddy, you gotta
like
back up.
Rapunzel and Flynn Rider.
I'm like, back up. Like, I'm sorry, but Toast is
well,
never
you
dated.
can usually tell with male cats because if they're spayed,
Olivia says he's fixed.
it looks like, yeah, you can tell in the face.
Mm.
If a male cat hasn't been spayed, he'll have like giant puffy cheeks. Like
I
that's
didn't know that.
the look of a tomcat who hasn't been spayed. They have a huge face. but
Olivia
it looks
says
like
he's
Bucket
fixed.
is.
Yeah, Olivia
He's
says
domesticated.
he's fixed. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I won't let him anywhere near Toast. I play a very protective owner. I'm like, back up. None of that. All right. Let's move on.
Guys, I am disgusted by this pathetic display by an Olympic athlete. He is named Sturla Holm Laegrid. He is a Norwegian, which would be a sin enough in my book. I don't like Scandinavian people, but he had to make it even worse by going live on air after winning a gold medal by admitting that he cheated on his now ex-girlfriend, begging for her to forgive him live on television. And not only that, but there are people actually taking his side and they think that this is a sympathetic character and we should be on his side and that this is actually a display of humility and compassion.
No.
And
It's literally
bravery.
none of those things.
I could not be more cringed out. Now, we're not going to show the video because he's speaking in like Norwegian or whatever language they speak. I have no idea. But there is a crude English translation I can try to give to you. And if it doesn't make perfect sense, you'll know why. So directly after winning his medal, this is what he said to the interviewer. There is someone I wanted to share this with who might not be watching today. He was, by the way, breaking down in tears, just overcome with emotion in the middle of this interview, about to burst into tears on air. 6 months ago, I met the love of my life, the most beautiful and kindest person in the world. 3 months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life and was unfaithful, and I told her about it a week ago. This has been the worst week of my life. Well, I'm sure it's so hard for you. Right?
That's humble bragging. He just won an Olympic gold medal and now he's humble bragging.
He says, this has been the worst week of my life. I told her a week ago, then it ended, of course. I'm not ready to give up. I hope that committing social suicide can perhaps show how highly I love her. I'm taking the consequences for what I've done. I regret it with all my heart. I had the gold medal in life, and I'm sure there are many people who will see things differently, but I only have eyes for her. Sport has come second these last few days. Yes, I wish I could share this with her.
That's even more humble bragging. He's like, I haven't even been trying, and I still won the gold medal.
Like, dude, fuck you.
The worst.
This is the worst thing ever. This is so pathetic.
So it's extremely selfish and it's humiliating for her. There's a way he could have done this in a slightly less selfish way, which would have been to just ask for her back and not admit the and not admit why you did it. Like, that's still bad because you're asking to be forgiven for being a piece of shit, but at least you don't humiliate her in the process.
Yeah, it's like, who wants, okay, no one wants to be cheated on, but even if they get cheated on in a relationship, they don't want the entire world to know.
No, they don't.
Obviously. So people are acting like he's the one who's taking the fall, but no, he's humiliating both himself and his ex, who rightfully kicked him to the curb and should not take him back.
And they were together for 6 months?
This is pathological behavior. I believe that this man probably has an incurable personality disorder just based on this behavior alone. Like, there is no salvaging this. No salvaging this person nor the relationship that he was in. And
where does
then
this
he
fall,
went on.
Where does this fall in the line of, like, because last year we talked about the couple that got engaged, where the guy asked the lady to marry him on the podium, which puts a whole ton of pressure on them. The hope, of course, being that they knew beforehand that they wanted to get married. They were just waiting for the right time.
It was the girl who just won a medal, and her boyfriend used that moment as the proposal and totally commandeered it.
Also
and took
selfish.
all the spotlight off of her.
Yeah.
And she looked really uncomfortable in the video. But this is way worse than that, in my opinion. He then goes on to a press conference after the fact and doubles down on it, saying that he hopes that she sees the video and he hopes that there can be a happy ending and that maybe she can forgive him and, maybe this can help. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Only time will tell. It wasn't just a heat of the moment thing. This was premeditated. And it's almost like he wanted to, like, put her in a position where she has to respond. Yeah. Like, she would have no other choice because people are going to find her on social media. And that's exactly what happened. She ended up having to give a public statement in response. Here's what she had to say. She is not taking him back. It's hard to forgive, even after a declaration of love in front of the whole world. I didn't choose to end up in this situation, and it hurts to have to be in it. We have been in contact, and he is aware of my views on this. So it doesn't sound like there's any chance that they're going to get back together. If they do, I will be extremely disappointed in the entire female species. But what shocked me the most is that there are people not only defending this, but villainizing the ex for not taking him back and saying that she's punishing him. So here was one reply saying, I don't condone his actions, but I certainly admire his humility to admit his mistake to the entire world and offer such a sincere apology. Even Olympic champions are human beings like the rest of us. And this other person said 10 out of 10 humility.
But the thing is like, actual humility would be to do it in private.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. If he really,
and it still wouldn't work,
felt any remorse for his actions, he wouldn't want to publicize it to the whole world, humiliating her in the process.
And it still wouldn't work, but it would have been the right thing to do.
Like, this is almost a betrayal worse than the cheating was in the first place. To expose it in front of millions of people who are consuming the story for entertainment value.
Yeah.
Another one said, he's a guy who's fully realized the mistake he's made. It's not easy for someone to go on camera with the whole world watching and ask for forgiveness. Maybe he deserves a second chance.
Oh, I think it's the opposite. I think people love fame and attention so much now they don't care whether it's humiliating them or not.
This is insane. Another one said, usually I would say once a cheater, always a cheater, but this guy deserves a second chance, a worldwide apology, and you can see his sincerity.
So basically what they're saying is like the normal everyday guy version of this is if this dude was a freaking insurance salesman, would be him hiring a skywriter to say, take me back.
Dudes used to show up outside of your window with a boombox.
They won't do it anymore.
Now they go on live TV and publicly humiliate you so that people will pressure you in your Instagram comments to get back together.
We got a 20 there. Do you got it from Shane H. Wilder?
Yes. I only have eyes for you. Other body parts, on the other hand. Dog, you cheated and announced it at the Olympics. The fact that you waited nearly 3 months to tell her so it aligned with the competition sounds like PR planning. Absolutely. It's a self-promotion tactic. I 100% believe that. And he knows what he's doing. Thankfully, it doesn't look like she caved to the pressure. But another comment that is even more insane than defending this guy is making her into the monster, making her into the bad guy. Yep. This person said, she's dragging it out publicly now too, though. What? He cried on live TV, owning his mistake right after a medal. Most guys wouldn't even admit it privately. If she really can't forgive after that level of vulnerability, maybe she's the one who never valued the relationship enough. Cheating sucks, but punishing forever when someone's genuinely remorseful is just revenge. So her not getting back with him after he betrayed her is revenge? Sounds like he did it to himself.
No, so basically they're saying like there was only one outcome you were allowed to have, and that was whatever the one he wanted was.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Like, I agree with the idea that it's once a cheater, always a cheater, for the record. Like, if you're the type of person who does that, it's likely something that you can't overcome, and even if you do, you should do it without burdening another person with your own, problems.
Making it public is like the worst part of I can possibly think of, right? It doesn't even have to be something negative. Taking your private life that public at all is a huge deal for a person, to do to a person if they don't want to be in the spotlight, let alone have it be about something that's so awful.
Yeah, I think bringing this to public attention in the tabloids is far more pathological behavior than the cheating was in the first place. And this guy, he's a sociopath. He might be like someone with a personality disorder, but honestly, it feels like this was premeditated and very much a play for public sympathy, even though he was the one who brought this situation on himself. I think that he did want to further humiliate her in the press. I believe that.
Look, I don't know if I believe that. I do believe that there is a certain type of person who's literally so, like you said, you saw the responses that you got that some of these people had that thought that he had the right idea, right? The world is full of all kinds who don't understand. Maybe he just can't process what this would mean to her because he's so self-involved. Right? He's so self-involved with the gesture that he doesn't comprehend that making it public to the entire world would be utterly humiliating for her, because his thought is, well, it's humiliating for me.
Right, because he only thinks about himself.
But everything is like I said, the rest of it was a humble brag. So it's even a humble brag where he's like, well, it's humiliating. Yeah, for him.
Guys.
Okay.
Well, this is something we were talking about off air before the show, is that in order to be successful after you debut as an Olympic athlete, you do need to kind of create a personal brand around yourself, and you need to obtain a social media following. You need to get brand deals in order to support yourself, because just competing in the Olympics is not enough to make a living. And I do believe that that's one reason why he would take this to the public because he wanted to make a PR stunt out of it.
Is he going to end up like as a spokesperson for OK Cupid? Who's going to...
Who knows? He could end up on Love Island. He could do anything with this. Once you have like that launch pad, anything is possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I believe that this is a self-serving move that he definitely put a lot of thought into beforehand. I don't think that it was really just in the heat of the moment after winning the medal that he made this decision. And of course, you know, in the process, you can tell that he's just making himself the victim of the story. He went on further in the clip to say, maybe I'm just stupid. I do stupid things. And I realize that this is the woman of my life, and I can't live my whole life keeping it a secret from her. My only way to my goal is to tell everything and put everything on the table and hope that she can still love me. I've done that for her, and now for the whole world. I have nothing to lose.
He's basically saying she's a bad guy if she doesn't do it.
I hope that she's compassionate enough to love me again. But if she's such a monster that she can't, you know, admire me for my vulnerability, then there's nothing I can do about that.
Like,
I'm disgusted.
He could be a reality TV show like this lady. A Love Is Blind contestant puts nail glue in her eye and is rushed to the hospital. They could end up together.
It doesn't attract the brightest bulbs, does it?
Oh boy.
I think that the hate that she's receiving and the praise that he is receiving it boggles the mind. I do not understand how I'm the same species as someone who would sympathize with this guy. Seriously.
All right.
He is a piece of trash.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, so according to a new private investigation of Kurt Cobain's death, there is reason to believe that there was foul play involved. One investigator said he believes it was a homicide based on the evidence that they have looked into, and the Daily Mail published a report on it. They did release a full paper if you want to go find that, but they summarize it here. They say an unofficial private sector team of forensic scientists have put fresh eyes on Cobain's autopsy and crime scene materials, bringing in Brian Burnett, a specialist who previously worked on cases involving overdoses followed by gunshot trauma. A lot of conspiracy theorists are feeling very vindicated right now, especially the ones who believed that Courtney Love was behind Kurt Cobain's death, but they didn't even mention that here.
Everybody in the chat is saying Courtney did it.
I don't know if I believe that, but let's get further into the details and we'll see. Independent researcher Michelle Wilkins, who worked with the team, told the Daily Mail that after just 3 days looking into the evidence with fresh eyes, Brian Burnett said, "This is a homicide. We've got to do something about this." The conclusion followed an exhaustive review of the autopsy findings, which revealed signs inconsistent with an instantaneous gunshot death. The peer-reviewed paper presented 10 points of evidence suggesting Cobain was confronted by one or more assailants who forced a heroin overdose to incapacitate him before one of them shot him in the head, placed the gun in his arms, and left behind a forged suicide note. Wilkins said, "There are things in the autopsy that go, well, wait, this person didn't die very quickly of a gunshot blast. The necrosis of the brain and liver happens in an overdose. It doesn't happen in a shotgun death." Burnett has decades of experience analyzing crime scenes and interpreting complex evidence. He's earned national recognition for his analysis in controversial cases like Marine Colonel James Sabow's death and the investigation into Billy Joe Johnson Jr., where his meticulous forensic reconstructions challenged official findings. A spokesman for the medical examiner's office told the Daily Mail that King County's medical examiner's office worked with the local law enforcement agency, conducted a full autopsy, and followed all procedures in coming to the determination of the manner of death as a suicide. Our office is always open to revisiting its conclusions if new evidence comes to light, but we've seen nothing to date that would warrant reopening of this case and our previous determination of death. And then a spokesperson for the Seattle Police Department said they do not plan on reopening the case based on this new paper. Our detective concluded that he died by suicide, and this continues to be the position held by this department.
I mean, getting
Daily
cops
Mail-
to do any type of, policing in the Pacific Northwest is impossible.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Is it gonna go from, Epstein didn't kill himself to Kurt Cobain didn't kill himself?
Yeah.
I think there's more reason to believe the former than the latter, but the Daily Mail reviewed Cobain's autopsy, which described how his body was found on the floor of the greenhouse above his garage. Examination of the miscellaneous papers in the left front pocket of his jeans reveals some writing in black ink reading Remington 20 gauge 2.34 shells or shorter, setup, light shot, and then a number. That was in the 1994 autopsy. Michelle Wilkins said, "To me, it looks like someone staged a movie and wanted you to be absolutely certain this was a suicide. The receipt for the gun is in his pocket. The receipt for the shells is in his pocket. The shells are lined up at his feet." The new forensic report noted that his sleeves were rolled back and the heroin kit was found several feet away, containing capped syringes, cotton buds, and pieces of black heroin of roughly equal size. We're supposed to believe that he capped the needles and put everything back in order after shooting up 3 times, because that's what someone does while they're dying. Suicides are messy, and this is a very clean scene. Police said Cobain injected himself with 10 times the normal amount even a heavy heroin user would have used. His autopsy showed fluid in the lungs, bleeding in the eyes, and damage to the brain and liver. These findings, according to the forensic report, are unusual for a quick gunshot death, but are common in deaths from heroin overdoses, which cause slow breathing and low blood flow. The eye bleeding and organ damage suggested his body may have been starved of oxygen, which likely did not happen from the gunshot alone. In most head gunshot deaths, blood is often drawn into the airways, but Cobain's autopsy did not mention this. While brain injuries can sometimes stop breathing, this usually happens shortly after the trauma, and with such a severe injury, some blood in the airways would normally be expected. The autopsy report suggested his brainstem, which controls breathing, was likely not damaged, and his arm position also indicated he did not have the rigid posturing usually seen with brainstem injury. The forensic paper underwent peer review through the editorial process at the International Journal of Forensic Science before being accepted for publication. Wilkins argued that Cobain may have been physically incapacitated before the fatal gunshot. She says he's dying of an overdose, so he can barely breathe. His blood isn't pumping very much, so that means the brain and liver aren't getting oxygen and they're starving and dying. She added that the size and mechanics of the gun made it improbable that a comatose Cobain could have handled it. If you look at the crime scene photos, you can see how big the gun is. Imagine he's comatose and dying, and also the way that he would have had to hold it, it's 6 pounds. The placement of Cobain's hands and the lack of blood splatter raised further questions. His left hand was tightly wrapped around the muzzle end of the gun's barrel, yet the shotgun shell was found on top of a pile of clothes opposite the expected ejection direction. So he's dying of an overdose, he's in a coma, he's holding this up to be able to reach the trigger to get it into his mouth. It's crazy. The team replicated the weapon and found if your hand is on the forward barrel where Kurt's hand was reported to be in the police report, the gun wouldn't eject a shell at all. So not only is there a shell where it shouldn't be, there shouldn't even be a shotgun shell. She also highlighted that his left hand was unusually clean. If you ever look at photos of shotgun suicides, they're brutal. There's no universe where that hand is not covered in blood. You could eat off of, well, I mean, gross, but like, his hand was so clean. According to the report, the homicide scenario is that Cobain's left hand was placed on the weapon after death, explaining the thumbprint-like mark observed on his hand. In forensic investigation, such a stain can help reconstruct events by showing what the individual touched or how a substance was transferred. Wilkins also cited blood patterns suggesting the body may have been moved. There's also blood on the bottom of his shirt. The only way blood would get on his shirt is if Kurt was lifted and his head was down. There's no blood on his hand, no blood on the rest of his shirt, but there's a big blood stain on the bottom of his shirt. The alleged suicide note was also scrutinized. The top of the note is written by Kurt, says Wilkins. There's nothing about suicide in that. It's basically just him talking about quitting the band. Then there are 4 lines at the bottom. If you even look at the note, you can see that the last 4 lines are written in different, well, she says basically the handwriting style changed. It's bigger and looks more scrawly. She emphasized that the team is not seeking arrests, but wants transparency and re-examination of the evidence. We weren't saying arrest people tomorrow. We were saying to have extra evidence that we don't have. Wilkins also noted that she has spoken to families whose loved ones took their lives because of Cobain's suicide. She said in 2022, a kid took his life because he believed that Cobain did. The copycat suicides have never stopped. Requests to reopen the case have been declined. They come back with no, like, we're not even looking at your evidence, she says. For her, the goal remains simple. If we're wrong, just prove it to us. That's all we ask them to do. And I highly doubt they're going to be successful if the goal is to reopen the case. There's honestly like very little chance that
there's no upside for them.
Yeah.
To reopen it, unfortunately.
And since she mentioned the copycat suicides at the end as one reason why they should rule out suicide, I think that that's a bogus reason to reopen the case, because even if it weren't Cobain, I mean, people who have suicidal ideation are going to justify turning to suicide for their own reasons. They're not.
We got a 20 here from Kyle Dixon. Says David Grohl's father was a speechwriter for George H. Bush. Ergo, the CIA called in a hit on Kurt.
But why?
But why?
What would be the motive? Like, I want to hear the most robust case for believing that there is foul play here, especially if you're going to go to the length of saying the CIA was involved instead of not like, you know, Courtney or his, like, some group of friends or people that actually know him.
There's a 20 here from Dingus Khan. Says there was a show on the Reels channel where a modern coroner would go over the autopsy of famous deaths. Cobain was one of them. All I remember was they took a blood sample from his heart due to a lack of blood elsewhere.
Well, ever since this headline hit X, people have been engaging in some pretty distasteful discourse.
Yeah, I saw somebody earlier ask what it was. A Remington 11. It was a 20 gauge shotgun, which is okay. One here from another 20 here from Dr. Rapscallion says, oh, of course my page crashed. Hold on 1 second. Thank you, YouTube. We appreciate that. I don't need a specialist to tell me that Brandon Herrera tested the whole circumstance and has convinced me that the gun couldn't have been shot by him given the type of gun it was, and also he had already OD'd. Yeah, that was that was an insane amount of heroin to inject and do so. The needles, like, I couldn't tell in the photos if the needles were pre-used, if they were saying that those were used needles that got recapped, because that definitely wouldn't have happened. Wow.
That is the claim.
Yeah.
And it is hard to believe. I'm not saying there's nothing suspicious about it. I think it's just incredibly unlikely that they're going to reopen the case, because it also is a hit to the credibility of the police department.
When I said like there's no upside to it, I wasn't saying there isn't a moral upside. I'm saying that law enforcement being what it is, they're not going to invite more scrutiny on themselves for something that's 20 years old. It's like whenever somebody goes back to Son of Sam, is that San Francisco or wherever it is, like somebody always tries to come in and they go to the cold case files because they want to solve it, but reopening inactive cases isn't helpful for them, because that would actually tie, if I remember correctly, if anybody's worked in law enforcement, if they reopen the case, it officially goes on the docket, and that will affect their closure rate. And that's a very like, you don't want to do that. You don't want your numbers to slide because it will directly affect your funding. So.
Yeah, they have no incentive to pick this back up, and they have every incentive to ignore the findings that this team put together. Here's another theory that was shared on X yesterday by Sean Patrick McCarthy. He said Courtney Love was sex trafficked by individuals with CIA connections. When Kurt moved to divorce her, they decided to have him killed. His death ensured her control over his share of Nirvana's publishing rights, worth $250 million or more.
Yep.
They also killed a Seattle PD detective for looking into where Kurt got the drugs that were in his system the night he died.
What does that mean? Like, did they give an example of, like, did that guy get killed by somebody that was prosecuted, or did he die in a car accident and they're trying to say that they set him up or something like that?
So the claim here is that, okay, so they...
Yes, I'm sorry. Zodiac Killer, guys. Zodiac Killer. I said Son of Sam. Son of Sam was New York. Sorry.
Let me see if I can find more information about this, because that was just a claim I had never heard before.
Yeah.
Detective Mike Ciesinski, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, reviewed the case in 2014, concluding that there was no evidence to overturn a suicide ruling. He found no earth-shattering evidence that would change the medical examiner's conclusion. He also confirmed the shotgun used in the death was recovered and examined, and the receipt for the shells was found in Cobain's pocket. Okay. Well, I'm not able to find any more information about that claim, but what followed this headline as well was a bunch of conjecture about what Courtney Love's motive would have been if she were guilty. They're kind of, doing an if I did it for her, like on her behalf. And
she inherited
Hitler
it was like it was tens of millions of dollars from his estate, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if not hundreds of millions, if we're talking about the publishing rights to Nirvana's music. But Radfem Hitler, a woman who goes by that screen name, weighed in on this and said, "What normies will never understand is that Courtney killed him out of love and utter devotion to his legacy. Imagine if Kurt Cobain were still alive today, an aging, washed-up Gen X former rock star, multiple stints in rehab, saying some bullshit about Donald Trump not being afraid to tell it like it is. For Nirvana to be immortalized, he had to die. By killing him, she ensured that he lived forever. There was no other way. Imagine a woman loving you so much that she sacrifices a life with you for your own immortality. Few are so lucky."
Radfem Hitler is one of those accounts where, depending on the time of day, can be either really fascinating to read or really, really annoying. I will say
I'm tired of these creative writing exercises.
If that was true, then it would follow that David Grohl would also be talking about how Donald Trump just tells it like it is. But we all know that that's not what it was. Nor do I buy that George Carlin would be based in current year. If he was, I think most of them would still be shitlibs.
If we're to take this post at face value, it's obviously insane to think that Kurt Cobain wouldn't be on Blue Sky if he lived until today. Like, he would be probably more deranged about Trump than Stephen King. But aside from that, she doesn't just hold the opinion that Courtney is guilty of the murder, but that it was a good thing if she did.
Bonkers.
Just a lot of people feeling vindicated in their personal pet conspiracy theory, which is that, it wasn't a suicide, but also that Courtney was guilty of it. I don't know where I stand on that, if I have like a gut feeling one way or the other, but the private investigation made no mention of who would have been at fault. I'm sure they have their own personal opinions, but they weren't meant to be shared in an academic journal.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. So all the way back in, I think the summer of 2024 was when we last talked about Tobey Maguire's dating life. He is divorced from the mother of his children, Jennifer Meyer, and has 2 daughters who are young adults now. And it appears that he has a penchant for dating women who are the same age as his daughters, which creeps a lot of people out. And back in 2024, that woman was a young influencer named Lily Chi. He actually was last seen with Lily Chi only a week or 2 ago, but it appears that he is in a new relationship with a 20-year-old model / influencer now, whose name is Mishka Silva. And they were actually at the Super Bowl together, which kind of confirmed people's suspicions that they were in a new relationship. There's a 30-year age gap between the two of them, and this caused a brand new round of age gap discourse to take place on X, which people just love doing, no matter where they fall on the issue. It's just one of their favorite things to talk and argue about. And I really don't understand why, because it's just such a tired subject. And like, especially with celebrities, they already live idiosyncratic lives and don't have normal relationships. So what they do really doesn't reflect on society as a whole. The average age difference between spouses in this country, it's not even 5 years. It's like 2.5 years, which is kind of incredible. Yeah. Like I find it even hard to believe, but it's true.
So, Mary was sending me the photos earlier, and I had to advocate for Tobey Maguire, because there was one where he looked particularly bad. But in the chat right now, Pat the Plumber says he looks good for 50. So, you know, it's 48, right? Or is he 50?
Yeah, I would say that he looks good for his age, but he's also always had that kind of like dorky look. It's kind of, you have to own it. But one person pointed out that Mishka Silva wasn't even born when Spider-Man 2 came out. And that is true.
Crazy work. That was also true of the one, not the first one.
That was true of his previous tryst as well. Lily Chi, that is. And another person said, for reference, this is the same age as his daughter, who was born in 2006, I believe. Yeah. Another person said his spidey senses are definitely tingling. Mm-hmm. Someone who was outraged by this said, this girl being only a year older than his 19-year-old daughter, someone needs to privately investigate Tobey Maguire with the way he always has an 18 to 22-year-old girl by his side. I don't know if there's anything to investigate because there is no crime taking place. I think it's just something that offends our sensibilities, and I understand perfectly well why. And, you know, I just tire of repeating this point over and over, but since people are still losing their minds over it, it's very clear why this makes people uncomfortable. It's because this is glorified prostitution. Y'all will look at a hoe who is in the process of hoeing and interact with it as if this is a real relationship. Mm-hmm. She's obviously an escort. And I don't really know why that even needs to be said. Like, she's an escort.
Wait,
she is hoeing.
What do you mean? Like, in the sense that you're saying that he's paying her for her time in the biblical sense, like, or in the sense that she gets nice things from this.
Does the distinction even matter at a certain point?
Does for legal reasons, yeah.
For legal reasons, sure, but you know a hoe when you see one. Like, we know hoeing when we see it. It doesn't really matter when you get down into the details of like how she's being paid. She's being compensated for her sexual services. And when you see a transactional relationship between an old rich guy and a young, relatively poor young woman, you're going to understand exactly why that's happening. They have an arrangement and there are terms, and they may not be as explicit as they would be in a contract, but she's an escort. She's a hoe.
So the idea is that they couldn't possibly have anything in common. Therefore, like, this is just what you accept. At what age gap does that officially stop being a thing? If she was like in her 30s or in her late 30s?
Look, there are transactional relationships of all kinds. And while I may be hyperbolic in calling it prostitution, I really don't think it's that far-fetched to say she's not interested in him for his personality, okay?
Well, I mean, isn't the
let's not flatter him.
The ladies
saying that they're just star-crossed lovers, okay? Let's not be naive.
The ladies, what is the joke? The ladies always have another word for it, right? It's not that they like that he's rich; it's that he's driven.
Right.
Okay.
So he's so accomplished, right?
Doesn't even bother. Like, this is literally what it was like when I watch old episodes of like Las Vegas, where all the rich guys are there with their very young girlfriends. And again, this was a time when people spoke of the agency of both the guy and the girl. The guy, you know, sometimes the guy would be like the old rich buffoon who does, you know, he's actually naive enough to believe that she likes him for him. But most of the time, both the girl is like coyishly very much vapid, And he's like, I enjoy her company. And that's just the way people at that level of wealth operate.
Well, yeah, I mean, pleasant company and politeness, that also goes with the services that you offer as a prostitute. Like, there are a couple of things that we're talking about here that I find morally repugnant and disgusting, which are pedophilia and prostitution.
Yeah.
What we're looking at is the latter, not the former. This is not creepy in the sense that he is preying upon this girl. It's creepy in that he is paying for sex. That is literally what is happening.
I like this.
That's why people find it gross.
Tom Holland is dating a 29-year-old. There is a 3-month age gap between them. Over 90 days.
Humanity.
They were not even born in the same fiscal quarter. June 1st, 1996 versus September 1st, 1996. Hollywood normalizes this.
Gross. He will not live this down. We can't let him keep getting away with it.
He's another one. Henry Cavill, one of the most handsome and greatest actors, dated Tara King when she was 19 and he was 32. He was happy. She was happy. Feminist girls did outrage and called him a pedophile. He had to break up with her. Why can't an adult man date an adult woman?
So in regard to Henry Cavill, I don't know if it's just a personal bias, but I actually think that was a genuine relationship. Partly because the age gap is a lot smaller in this case.
But also you think that they look more, they don't look like Instagram hoes. They look like normal women.
And this was hella long ago, right? That he was in a relationship with this girl. Probably before what we know now as like the industry of being a professional influencer. I don't think that's how they met. They probably met in a more organic fashion. And I also don't think that he broke up with this girl because of people being mad at their age gap. Like, there were probably other reasons that we have no idea about because we don't know these people.
So should we get into the typical, but what about the other way around? Should we talk about Madonna and Cher?
Yeah, both Madonna and Cher and Kathy Griffin, who was brought up in these replies, are dating younger men, significantly younger men. Madonna is 67 and she is in a relationship with a 29-year-old. Cher is in her 70s and she's with a man, I believe, in his 30s.
So does that mean Madonna...
Kathy Griffin said that she was with a man in his 20s.
So is Madonna dating a male, an allegedly male prostitute then? Or is it an emotional...
Yeah, basically,
okay.
Yes. Yes. I mean, tell me any other reason why a healthy young man with his whole life ahead of him would be in a relationship with, I'm sorry, but this horrifying looking woman other than her money. That is hoeing. That is a male escort that you were looking at in that video. I'm sorry, but it's just true. They're not in love and they're not attracted to each other. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna draw your attention to this one because I saw this just before we went live. It says Alex Earle is apparently hooking up with Tom Brady. Alex Earle dated Tom Brady's former teammate Braxton Berrios for 2 years. Earle is only 25 and he is 48. And the person who quote tweeted this says, "Shout out to Breeze, Rogers, and Manning for not hooking up with kids." She's a 25-year-old child, Mary.
Huh?
Yep. She's a 25-year-old child. I'm glad that we've accepted that women are children at the age of 25.
I would like to have a real conversation about sexual ethics that's not completely fictional. What we can say bothers us about this is that she is hoeing for status, attention, exposure, and money. That's what's happening there. She's obviously not interested in Tom Brady's personality, okay? He's a horrifying person, actually. He cloned his dog like 3 times.
Well, can I ask you a question then? Like,
an embarrassing person.
So people in the chat were saying, by your standards, Mary, all relationships are prostitution. Is it simply the age? Like, is it simply the age of if Tobey Maguire was dating like a 40-year-old Instagram model who was modeling for AARP ads or something like that? Is that somehow more wholesome?
Wholesome? No, I wouldn't call it wholesome, but I would also call that what it is, a transactional arrangement rather than an actual relationship based in mutual affection and self-sacrifice.
But what if you're okay? So what if you're?
It's embarrassing for him that he has kids and he's not with the mother of his children. Like,
that was my other point.
You should be married at that age.
So
you shouldn't be gallivanting around town with some Instagram model. That is embarrassing.
So let me ask you a question. So if they settle down and they got married and they had kids, does that change things, or is it still a transactional relationship?
I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I bet that's happened in many cases.
Not saying that's what's going to happen
Unlikely.
here. I'm just so basically
unlikely, right? Because he's not looking for commitment. He's looking for sex and company, which escorts offer with no strings attached. Like, if they got married, I guess, okay. I mean, I still think that you should be with the mother of your children. The only reason that they cited for their divorce, by the way, was that they had grown apart.
Oh, that's always
that is
the
some
one, right?
bullshit.
Irreconcilable differences.
Just grow the fuck up. You had children with somebody. Okay, so you don't feel the spark anymore. Grow up. Like, why do you destroy your whole home for that?
What about Al Pacino and Noor Al-Fallah? They have kids together, and she's 32 and he's in his 80s.
Well, look at her track record. She was dating elderly, geriatric, rich men.
That's her thing.
Before Al Pacino. She has a type.
It was Clint Eastwood, right? She dated Clint Eastwood.
I don't remember who it was, but look at their track record. It speaks for itself. Like, some people in this world, maybe even most, are not looking for real commitment and real love. They're not interested in that. They have other priorities. And I think we can criticize them for that.
Is it possible?
Like, that's totally valid.
So do you think that he's doing this, loath as I am to speculate, I guess, is he doing it knowingly, or is he just naive and he's saying, like, you know what? I'm looking for love. I'm looking for love in all the wrong places, that being the DMs of Instagram models. Because if he's looking for love, then it's incumbent upon us to prove that she's doing it purely for the financial benefits' sake. And that's not to me to say that that's not the likely outcome. Obviously, I'm not naive. I understand that that's very clearly what it looks like here. But I'm just saying that it's kind of a weird form of speculation, because you never know until you know.
Well, that would be the archetype of the guy who thinks that the stripper likes him. Like, it is true that in a lot of these high-profile age gap relationships, you can probably guess that the guy is the one who's going to get his heart broken. Because the women, they want to appear to be the naive one, or the one who is on the rung below in the power dynamic. But in reality, these young women know exactly what they're doing, and they have a lot of power in these relationships, and they're wielding it for their own benefit and cynically doing so. I think that it is likely that a lot of these men actually believe that, like, this Instagram model actually likes them. I'm sorry. It's not realistic. Like, I don't believe that easily.
Okay. So I have one more question for you then. So what does that disdain look like? Is it that she's literally like revolted by him and she puts on a brave face every time? Or is it that human beings are more complicated than that? And it becomes less important when the car is nice, the dinners are nice, and then if that stuff was to go away, suddenly the things that didn't bother her before suddenly bother her just a little bit more than they did when he picked her up in a Bentley.
It's certainly not a recipe for success in a heterosexual relationship where the woman has to have respect for the man that she is with in order to be happy in the relationship.
He needs to be like, look, if he wants to weed him out, he's like, look, we're splitting dinner for the first 2 months. Like, I'll buy today, you're buying tomorrow. We're going Dutch. Like, Mary hates the Norwegians, so the Dutch aren't much better. So he's like, we're going Dutch till you prove that you're not just with me for those Spider-Man bucks.
Yeah, I mean, am I like coming off as way too cynical here? I just think it's like pretty obvious what's going on.
I think if you hadn't used the term prostitute at the beginning, the cynical nature of it is spot on. But I get your point. You're illustrating.
I don't get it, because for me, I have such a low tolerance for people. This is me stepping away from my beliefs as a Catholic and my belief in the Catholic teaching about marriage and sexuality entirely. I'm stepping back from that, and I'm looking at this purely from an incentive structure. Like, I can't tolerate being around someone that I like genuinely don't like. I this is why I say I don't understand the foodie call thing where you go on a date with a guy you don't like so you can get free dinner. I can't tolerate being around somebody for 2 hours straight that I don't like. Why would I do that? That sounds like I'm the losing party.
You are high in disagreeableness and low tolerance for bullshit. So
I could literally never sit across from Tobey Maguire and like make him feel like he's the shit. I just would not be capable of doing it. But you know, some people have a higher tolerance for that, and they're using it to their own selfish benefit. And that's what I believe is happening here. And I wish that we could have an honest conversation about that. But instead, one side is saying that, you know, he's a pedophile, and the other side is saying that, you know, he's just, you know, playing the game, and we should be happy for him. And, you know, it's just like feminists and jealous old women who are talking shit. Like, I'm sorry, but like, you should probably just grow the fuck up at that age and like be with the mother of your children. That's like my hot take, is like, if you have children with somebody, I think like growing apart isn't a good enough reason to destroy your home.
I mean, that's likely not the reason. It's just that he's a public figure, so they did that.
That's if we're to believe the explanation that they gave.
Look, I don't like in these cases. I feel like this is a callback to like the live and let live attitude that people had, you know, well over 20 years ago now, where people are like, you know what, she's vapid, he's rich, they're a perfect match for each other. She is building her resource pool, and he is maximizing the use of all that he's gained in the world.
What is that? It's like some form of something maxing.
Wait, is he hypergamy maxing, or is she hypergamy maxing? One of them has to be hypergamy maxing.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments. I'm curious.
All right, let's go to Super Chats. We got something to talk about here. We're almost at a second crisis party, by the way, guys. Let's get it.
Nice. Shane Twelder said, I had you doing Cher and Benson Boone to a full stadium. You know where to find it. The grammatically incorrect, non-existent show is also really fun. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Wait, is that technically... It's grammatically incorrect, so on purpose? I can't tell. I have no idea.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I have no clue.
Bad Adam 12 said, Mary, is the internet show a one shot, or is it going to be a regular thing? Well, I've heard of a internet show. I haven't heard of the internet show.
Sounds interesting.
You're gonna have to fill me in on that. Yeah, I'll look that up later and do some research. But yeah, I think you can expect to see more of me in other places on YouTube. Shane H. Wilder said, I don't know. I think Mary might like Pretty Little Liars. I really enjoyed it, and shows like that are not normally my thing.
Yeah, it's almost like when you think of the idea of pulp. I talk about my love for the show Banshee. It's like pulp, but for like women. It is. It's if there was, I guess in the same way, I've never watched Gossip Girl, but I imagine it's the same as that.
It's really not, though, from what I understand. Like, I've watched all of Gossip Girl at least twice, and they didn't ever take it to the level of theatrics and ridiculous plot lines that Pretty Little Liars did.
The A storyline is patently absurd.
Thank you. Like, not gonna say that like Gossip Girl didn't take it to some crazy places in the storylines, but ultimately it was like there's just this anonymous blogger who's talking shit about all of them, and you have to figure out who it is at the end.
I mean, it's more than that. People get set up for stuff, and like it's bonkers. I enjoyed it.
Robert.
Also, it's one of those things where I feel like most of the cast was like perfectly done in which they did it. The lady who plays Mona looks nuts. She does. And she's fantastic at looking absolutely insane.
That's a skill.
Yeah.
Robert Delara said it would have been interesting to see if the Snow White movie would have done better with a better actress and real dwarfs.
I mean, it would have, but even if the better actress still said stupid things, that might not have helped. I don't actually think that Rachel Zegler is a inherently bad actress, at least not in the few things that I've seen her in. But you do run the risk of people being unable to separate art from artist if you get caught with too many headlines that end up rubbing people the wrong way. And unfortunately, sometimes you can't stop the media machine that comes after you with those comments. And she ran afoul of people in the space that just ended up costing her.
And it being 2022 when those comments first came out, it was a perfect storm to become a culture war issue. Nowadays, I don't even think it would have blown up in the same way.
No, now I'm like, oh God, does that mean I have to talk about Kid Rock too somehow? Like anything but that.
Yeah. Shane H. Wilder said, I looked it up. Most of Batman Begins was shot at Shepperton Studios in Middlesex.
So that falls through. The only other person that I could think of besides Katie Holmes, I guess, would have been Morgan Freeman, because he was in that movie and he's American.
Yeah. Shane H. Wilder said Weinstein was always an open joke. People made jokes about it at award shows, and there was a one-liner on Family Guy. Yeah, it was well known for years, and then they had to ritually sacrifice him and make it out like he's the only producer or director in Hollywood using his power to get sexual access so that the rest of them can end up getting away with it after he is thrown behind bars. Shane H. Wilder said, I only have... Oh, I think I read that one earlier. It was about the Norwegian guy. Robert Delara said, when it comes to the Olympian admitting they're cheating, at least you can... can tell it was not an American. We escaped that catastrophe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but although there have been some cringe moments from other Olympic athletes that are competing for the U.S., one of them was talking about ICE recently and saying it's our responsibility to like speak out because it like makes a difference in our daily lives and blah, blah. There's another one who's a figure skater who's waxing poetic about LGBTQ representation.
Yeah, I thought about doing a topic about like, you know, the concept of patriotism at the Olympics, but we didn't end up covering it. But it's an interesting thing to talk about because like baked into the concept of the Olympic Games is national pride.
Yeah.
Like weirdly enough, like it's actually hard to believe that the Olympics hasn't been turned into more of a globalist affair than it already is, given the fact that you're bringing all these countries together for the sake of like, you know, international unity and bringing people together through competition. But everybody knows at the surface, what it should be is America rules and the USSR drools. And that's why, Miracle on Ice happened in 1980. Right? Because you should be wanting your country to win. But America is the only country that trains its citizens to hate where they're from. At least I don't know if that's happening in other countries, but that level of Marxism in America feels unique these days.
I forget her name, but there was one American athlete that was asked like just some bogus question like, so do you really feel proud to be competing for the United States when our political climate is blah, blah, blah? And like the athlete handled it really well and basically said like, no, I'm definitely proud to represent my own country. And like, what are you talking about? Yeah. It's not a response I would have expected to hear, honestly. Corey Anderson said, I've been claiming Courtney was responsible since 1995. I mean, back then you didn't have social media to talk about it. So it would have been a larger conspiracy theory at the time had they had social media to discuss it.
Yeah.
Probably for the best that they didn't.
Yep.
Kyle Dixon said, that was the one about Dave Grohl's father.
I read that one. They're coming for Courtney Love in your town. They're after her right now. They just heard our video and they're like, we're going to arrest her. We're going to extradite her to Seattle.
Dingus Khan said there was a show on the Reels channel.
I did that one, yeah.
About the Kurt Cobain thing. Shane H. Wilder said, okay, hear me out. It was Good Will Hunting director Gus Van Sant, so he could make the movie Last Days, a fictional retelling of his death. I don't know what that means. What was that about?
I don't know what Last Days is, but I like Good Will Hunting.
We were talking about who could play Kurt Cobain in a biopic before the show.
Yes.
And I would be all for Ross Lynch in that role. I think that he would be the perfect pick.
With this specific face, I said Sebastian Stan has like almost the exact same mouth as him.
But then the top of his face, especially the forehead, kind of ruins it.
Then he's got but then you have to live with the fact that the same guy played both Donald Trump and Kurt Cobain, and I don't know if people want to go there.
Well, if Ross Lynch did it, then they would have to deal with the fact that he played Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah. So, you know, you take what you can get. Greg Duvier said, Brett, did you believe that Cobain deleted himself?
I never had many thoughts about it. He died in, what, 94? I would have been like 8 years old. My brother was probably more affected. Like, my brother definitely had, like, the MTV Nirvana Unplugged album in his room. One thing my brother will still never forgive me for is I used to just take his CDs and listen to them all the time and never put them back in the right place in the CD rack. So, you know, my brother would have strong opinions. Maybe I'll send him a text later and be like, so, just unprompted, you think Cobain killed himself or what? Like, he'd be like, do you mean Epstein or what? I'd be like, no, like Cobain, literally Nirvana, 90s, something in the way.
I feel like it's something that it's like one of those safe conspiracy theories, you know, that people feel comfortable riffing about because it's been long enough. Like, honestly, people feel that way about 9/11 too.
Yeah, they're like, well, I mean, but the thing is those are indicative of just how fast the internet has pushed the envelope, which is that it took a while for 9/11 memes to become culturally acceptable. It would be very much acceptable to post Cobain memes, but people were not happy with Charlie Kirk memes right after the fact. It happened almost instantaneously. There is a quickening of the culture that just says it goes straight to nihilism and humor.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those memes were perhaps misinterpreted because, you know, the Charlie Kirk brain rot was more a way of, the way I looked at it, it was more a way of like kind of satirizing the hysteria that followed and maybe that people sort of mythologized him to the point of just being ridiculous after his death. Like the We Are Charlie Kirk song that they started posting on TikTok, it's not making fun of Charlie Kirk, in my opinion. I think it's making fun of people who mythologized him after his death to the point of like fiction.
Well, there was also people that were making jokes about Erica Kirk. Like it was like
a lot of that, yeah.
Like, you know, because it was like they had like the fireworks and the pyro at the events, and they're like, when you have to defend the world heavyweight title, but you've got a funeral afterwards. It's like, it's absurd. On its face, it looks absurd. So people that don't have a connection, it's different for us because we're in this space, and it hits close to home because people we know knew him, or even I don't know if you ever met him. I don't think I
didn't know.
He was here when I was here, but I don't know if I ever met him. But it's different, and you have to acknowledge that different people at different levels of, I guess, like space in the movement, like depending on how close they are to it, they're going to have a different
proximity.
Yeah, like your proximity to that situation is going to color how you're going to do so. I'm sure there are plenty of people who were, you know, in New York City when the towers came down that don't take kindly to memes about 9/11.
Sure, yeah.
So, but
that's just the reality now.
Andy Panda said safe. What I meant by safe is like there's the concept of like the meme the meme that you're okay with posting on your story, and the meme that you know you can send to the bros without it causing problems.
Yes. Shane H. Wilder said age gaps don't usually bother me as my parents were 12 years apart. but they were also married 46 years. Big difference from Toby going from chick to chick. Yeah, and same for me with my parents having an age gap too. But I mean, I don't have anything wrong with age gaps in and of themselves. It's just like usually that's a feature, not a bug of transactional relationships between celebrities and influencers, especially. No Control said only old women care about age gaps, jealousy. I think there is definitely some of that involved in the discourse about age gaps, but that wouldn't really explain why so many teenagers and women in their early 20s are scandalized by it, seemingly the most. I think there's a certain Zoomer brainworm about age gaps that is stronger than with millennials.
I think it might be, it's like the word you used earlier, the proximity to shaming and cultural norms. And if you live terminally online, you would have to constantly answer questions about why you're in a relationship with that person. So even if it doesn't bother them on a personal level, their fear of being ostracized for it might prevent them from showing acceptance to it.
Yeah, it's just one of those absurd dating rules that has been embraced by Gen Z, who have less dating experience than the rest of the population. But yeah, I definitely saw like countless responses, just like dragging Tobey Maguire, and I look at their accounts and they're visibly like high school girls. Like those are the people who are the loudest critics of age gap relationships, is usually the opposite of who you'd think. So I think that's a weird Zoomer thing. Corey Anderson said, please never mention Kathy Griffin doing anything. You got it. I mean, usually we don't. Usually we like to forget that she exists, but it was relevant today. Shane H. Wilder said, Brett, come on, he ain't marrying her. Yeah,
look,
no.
Just because you guys don't believe in true love, okay? Maybe he loves her for her opinions on the political and social and economic state of the world. Did you ever think about that?
They're in the middle of a date, and he's like, can we just talk about the political and economic state of the world right now?
What if they're at dinner and he's talking about this new movie he's got coming out. He's like, oh, and it's this great idea, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I want to talk about the jobs report. Like, man, we had a huge uptick in manufacturing. I didn't want to give Trump any credit, but the new jobs report is just, it's ticking towards an economic upturn that I wasn't expecting. Can we talk about that? And then Tobey Maguire's gonna be like, I'm an independent contractor. It's got nothing to do with me.
And he's like, wow, you have such a beautiful mind.
That's what he loves her for.
Corey Anderson said, we now know why Mary moved. She couldn't tolerate being in a room with Brett for 2 hours.
That's what it is.
Look, I think that for both of our safety, we needed to separate.
That's what
it was getting really toxic behind the scenes. I'll go into no further detail than that.
The arguments could be heard from upstairs.
This arrangement is what's best for all parties. Katie said, hi, Brett and Mary. Are you shocked about the Kurt Cobain news that his death was a murder? Well, I think a lot of people are like taking that headline and really stretching the truth, because they're claiming that this is the undeniable proof we've been waiting for that he was murdered. No, that's not what it is.
But the thing is,
more evidence.
Didn't this happen before? I swear I've heard this story. I've seen this article, that same article written before, that somebody else had come to the conclusion that it was a murder.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they're not the first private sector team to look into it, but they might have had a more high profile.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm being slandered in the chat by Old Fox, who says Brett's still rocking those Gildan shirts. I would never in my life besmirch my flesh with a Gildan shirt. There's literally it's literally as if somebody was like, what if we made shirts, but they fit nobody? Shirts for nobody. That's what Gildan is. I would never do that.
For literally nobody.
Like seriously, what if it was designed for an omelet? For a guy.
You mean you're only a Fruit of the Loom guy? You're a Fruit of the Loom loyalist?
Well, when it comes to undershirts, yes, absolutely. Not even Hanes shirts, garbage. Get rid of them. The only one that was cut properly as far as length is the Fruit of the Loom shirts, and even those could do a little bit better.
Shane H. Wilder said, if I could get some prayers, I have an interesting opportunity and really want it to work out, even though it means I'd have to move out from Texas.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. I'll pray for you. Otis Crinkle said, what color were Kurt Cobain's eyes? One blue this way, one blue that way?
That's
what?
That's rough. It's a joke about him shooting himself in the face.
Oh.
But you have to be scandalized about that. Corn Pop in the chat says, Brett, you always have terrible collars. I don't know what your guys' obsession is with being choked by your own shirts. You clearly have some type of fetish for losing, like for asphyxiating yourself with your own clothing, which is a little bit weird to me. But hey, I'm just a normal guy. If you guys want to,
Brett wishes that he could wear a neckline like this one.
If you guys want to go through autoerotic asphyxiation with your own clothing, that's your business. But don't bring your perversions into my life.
Yeah, it's a free country and everything. Shane H. Wilder said, Last Days was a movie about the last days of Kurt Cobain. Look up the movie poster. The actor looked strikingly similar to Kurt.
Say it again.
It was Last Days.
Who was the actor? What was the actor's name?
Let me see. It was starring, some other result came up. Hold on. There's a different one named Last Days that came out last year. Okay, Last Days of 2005. That was played by Michael Pitt. Michael Pitt played Kurt Cobain. Let me look him up. I wonder if that was a good match.
I have to see.
I don't think I've ever heard of him.
Oh, that's a pretty good fit.
I mean, when he was younger,
the hair is doing a lot of the work.
But I still think that Ross Lynch, if they did a more recent biopic about Kurt Cobain, I still think Ross Lynch would be the best pick. No Control said Kirk's funeral was more exciting and upbeat than the All-American halftime show. Unfortunately, true. Yeah. Pop Culture Junkie said, Mary, having worn them for the first 1/3 of my career, do you miss wearing your headphones? I stopped because I don't know. It was just like uncomfortable. Now maybe it's different now that I'm not like in the studio and I'm in my home doing this.
When I record videos at home, I use like smaller, like earbuds rather than over-the-ear headphones. Works fine.
I like this better. I also think it's more flattering because I'm on camera. If I were on radio, I could do whatever I want. Corey Anderson said, there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Assholes just exist. There is no reason to rename things when you can just call them assholes. Yeah, that's true. Not sure how that came up.
I do like the idea of like back in the day, your assumption when somebody was being mean is that they were just mean. It wasn't that they hated a specific group. There was literally such a thing as just a guy who was a dick. And he was like, maybe that I was trying to explain why yesterday or the day before about like the idea of likable characters, and likable doesn't always mean nice. Maybe that's why they like House, because he's actually mean to everybody rather than one specific group of people.
Yeah, he's just a hater.
He's like, there's literally the episode with Pruitt Taylor Vince where he's like, the guy's 600 pounds and he makes a fat joke and the guy goes, fat joke. Only people you can make fun of anymore. And this is back in like 2006. He goes, yeah, except for Jews and black people. You can make fun of whoever you want. All it takes is a little bit of will.
Corey Anderson said, Brett, your collars are so wide, the two-headed girl would still have neck room if they wore your shirts. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah. I mean, he's right. That's actually, I got the shirt from them.
Shane H. Wilder said, Brett was a Fruit of the Loom fan since before the Large Hadron Collider removed the cornucopia.
Yep. I mean,
Yeah,
that's another
a
one of
real
those.
hipster
That's
take.
another one of those great poisonings of the well, where people started making fake versions of it and then putting them in thrift stores.
Yeah, they're just enemies of the truth. They're actively trying to make us all schizophrenic. I think we're all caught up on the super chats. Are we caught up on Rumble as well?
Yeah, we are caught up over there. I'm just double checking everything here to make sure that because sometimes stuff comes through at the end. I think we are all caught up.
Well, look, if you're late,
oh no,
late.
there's one more there from No Control. It should have just come through, I think.
Assholes Exist is my new emo band name. We were talking about Social Suicide as a band name.
Yep,
but
I
bet it's been used already, like many times.
So in the chat, Spike says maybe it's just Brett's pencil neck, but then somebody else said I was all neck. So
you don't have a pencil. You have a very normal sized neck. Okay, don't let them get in your head.
There is actually one shirt that I stopped wearing, the gray one of these, because the neck did get even more stretched out than usual. But I think actually what it is, it's literally
it was even too much for you.
I think no, I used to cut the necks out of all my shirts, because most shirts they have like a hemline with like about that much fabric. You just cut those out there, because why would I want to skate and then have this thing just, I mean, apparently people in the chat like being choked by their shirt, but I don't. So, that's what it is. All right, guys, before we go, would you hit the like button on this video, please, and subscribe to the channel. If you are new here and you have not subscribed here yet already, please and thank you. Remember to share the episodes out with everybody that you know in your life. The more people that you share the show with, the faster the channel can grow. I also have a video coming out tonight about the box office projections for Scream 7. It looks like that boycott that was going on over Melissa Barrera has, in fact, fallen apart, as Scream 7 looks like it's going to be doing good numbers. So you should check that video out tonight. Mary, where can they find you?
You can send me validation on Instagram at Mary Archived, or you can send me hate on X. That is also Mary Archived. And help me get TikTok famous. That is also Mary Archived. And in case any of you are interested in some new content from a internet show, I believe the link will be in the description, but no further details will be given.
I don't even know what that is. If you guys want to follow me, I am on Instagram and on X at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. We are here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, of course, noon Pacific. We are on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, and Spotify. If you would like to listen rather than just watch the show, you can also rate and review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, which is a great way to help the channel out. And if you want to follow us on social media, we are on Twix at popculture_show, Facebook at popculturecrisis, Instagram at popculturecrisispod. Guys, we will be back with another episode tomorrow. We'll see y'all then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.